Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Really excited for my next guest. My friend Vern Harris is with us. I've known Vern for almost a decade. He's a real estate investor, a licensed real estate agent based out of Denver, Colorado. He focuses mainly on assisted living, where he's closed over 87 transactions totaling more than $130 million. Very impressive. Vern also founded the Denver Association of Assisted Living Residences, which has over 1,100 members and provides brokerage solutions for those looking to grow, buy, or sell businesses in the assisted living sector. Vern, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate you taking out the time. I know you've got so many really fun and exciting things going on in the assisted living world, but you've got a great story, and I think that the world needs to hear it. So thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Vincent. I appreciate it.
You got it. So, as I mentioned, we met almost a decade ago. We met at one of the DARI meetings. It's the Denver Association of Real Estate Investors here in Denver with Mike Mangum, right?
Yep,
Our our co-friend. He's now currently out in the Florida area. It feels like a lifetime ago.
a lot of deals ago, that's for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. And back then, you were kind of just getting started, right? Because you got into real estate in 2014, right?
Yep, that's right. And Mike was my mentor, actually. So, yeah.
So he got you in the business, or he didn't get you in the business. You got in and he helped you get started, taught you some things. Tell me about your relationship with Mike. How did you guys meet, and how did you get going, and how did he help you get your career started?
Well, Mike and I are old friends. I met him when I was, 18 years old. And he was working in a motorcycle repair shop, and I got a job there, and that's how we met. And then a few years later, he started his motorcycle shop, and I started a sign company in the same plaza. So we were business neighbors for many years, and fishing buddies and just friends. And after he moved on from that, and he called me up to go out and do some signs at a church that he was doing, and went out and chatted with him. I said, "Hey, what are you doing these days?" And he said, "Oh, I'm doing this real estate thing." And I said, "Oh, that's really interesting. I'm kind of interested in that. Tell me about it." And he said, "Well, we're doing these flips and, selling houses." Basically, it was wholesaling. I didn't understand it at the time, but I told him I wanted to learn about it. So I was really busy. I said, I'll circle back with you in about 6 months and we'll talk about it. So 6 months later, I called him up and said, "Okay, I'm ready." And he kind of showed me the ropes of what it was. And I got, very interested. I've always been interested in real estate investment. I bought the old Carlton sheets way back in the 2000s.
So did I. That was my first program I purchased.
Yeah, me too. But I didn't understand it enough. And, this is the kind of thing that really helps to have somebody to kind of guide you through it. It's really tough to just do on your own. So, and I was fortunate because we were friends, and I went through one of his mentorship programs, and, it really got me going on this, just in the investment, and did a lot of education. I'm a real believer in education for any kind of business, and real estate's got tons and tons of education opportunities. And I've spent, a couple $100,000 on my education throughout the years, but it's paid off. It's something you really want to do. And, again, I was fortunate to have people guide me along through the process.
Oh yeah. So you've done all different kinds of strategies. You did wholesaling, you've done some, acquiring of your own properties, but you really found your niche in assisted living. What drew you specifically to assisted living, and how did you identify that as such a strong niche for real estate investing?
Well, when I was in business before, one of my mentors then was a business broker. And that always intrigued me, business is business, and just the overall business brokerage had me very interested. And after I got my license, I was involved. I went to Gene Garino's 3-day workshop on assisted living. And I'm sitting in this room thinking, wow, there's 100 prospects in here. And, I just got my license, and, the niches are in the riches. So I wanted to focus in on something. And the fact that there was a business component with a real estate component really, really appealed to me. So I thought, this seems like a great thing to focus in on, and decided to, make it a niche.
Yeah, so it's got that unique aspect of the business and the real estate tied together, which can complicate things and make it more difficult to underwrite and look at these deals. I'm sure early on there was a lot of complexity to it, but you found your place in that. For the people who are thinking about assisted living, what would you tell them about getting into the space? Like, would you say like you start off there, or you start off with something a little bit more basic like wholesaling or fix and flip and then work your way into it? Or can you just start in assisted living?
Well, usually if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I've heard the numbers are great and I want to get into assisted living, the first thing I try to do is talk them out of it. And I say, why do you want to do this? And if I can't talk them out of it, then I'm happy to help them. But, I explain to them, this is, it's a business, and business is tough. Any business is tough. And, nothing comes easy. Even wholesaling was not easy. I was successful with that, but it took a lot of work. And, that's a business in itself. Real estate is a business in itself. And assisted living is a business. So, if you get into it and you've got a heart for it, a reason, and a lot of people do that because, well, my grandmother was in a place, I didn't like where she was at, or, there's a lot of stories like that. And if they got a heart for it, man, this is a great place for them. And, if it's done right, it can be very, very successful and lucrative. If it's not done right, like any business, I've seen people lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. Overall, I've probably seen at least $2 to $2.5 million lost in this business. But you can get that in multifamily, you can get that in single family, you can get that in any business. So I always ask them why, because it does have a different component with it, and that is the caring of the people. And if you're just an investor and that caring of the people doesn't matter to you, it's probably not the right business for you, or at least that part of it's not the right part. You could be a passive investor, which we deal with a lot of passive investors, and they have nothing to do with the operations. And that's what we build our business on, is that landlord side. And it's worked out well. It just depends on what you want to do with it. It's not an easy business to get into either. It takes a lot of money, actually, if you want to start one of these things. Usually when I talk to people about that, it's going to take about $500,000 cash just to get started. And that's using financing to buy the real estate. But, getting the house converted, or going through the licensing and the working capital for starting and all that stuff, it's not easy. But if you got, you got the wherewithal, people do it all the time.
Yeah. Well, let's get into what it is for those of our audience that don't know what assisted living is. Can you just break it down for them?
You bet. So assisted living is helping people that need help with the activities of daily living. And basically that's, dressing and toileting and getting around and eating and doing your laundry. It's, there's about a half dozen basic activities of daily living. And as people get older, they can't do all of those things. Mobility is a problem for some, even getting to eating and taking their meds regularly. There's all kinds of things that can really hurt them if they're not doing it regularly. So when they kind of get to that point in life, then they go into assisted living. And, in the senior housing, I'm going to encompass it a little bit bigger too. So in the senior housing, there's a number of different stages. And the first one, which is kind of a new one, is called active adult. And that's, basically as we get older, we get into maybe an apartment complex. It's got activities and kind of built for older people. It's age restricted, so 55 and up, we see that. Then the next step up from that is independent living. So now, maybe you need some help with your laundry or maybe some cooking, but you're still getting around okay. So you can still live on your own. So that's the next step, is the independent living. And then when you get to the point where you start having, some of the activities of daily living that you can't do, you go from independent living to assisted living. And the next step up from there is typically, either memory care or skilled nursing. So if you get into the point where you need so much help that it takes a nurse to help you on a daily basis, then you're going to go into the skilled nursing facility. So that's kind of how it progresses. So it's a pretty wide thing, the senior housing thing. It's not just assisted living. This is just one pillar of it.
So it sounds great, but how the heck is that related to real estate?
Well, everybody needs a place to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in assisted living, it's typically a facility or even a house that has got rooms for each of the residents that live there. And then there's caregivers that help these people and cook for them and take care of them. And, that's your typical house model. And that can go to a larger model, like a 30 unit or a 100 unit facility or something along those lines, where there's several people doing this type of thing. And, everybody's got their own room. Sometimes they share a room. So there's real estate that's involved there. You got to have a place for all this. And that's where the real estate aspect comes in.
So for the people that are thinking about this, it doesn't have to be like, I used to picture like a hospital, like when I didn't really understand it. But it isn't like these really large facilities typically, or it can be, but it's sometimes it's just a normal house that people want to turn it into assisted living.
Yeah, we think of that institution because that was what was around for many, many years until, probably about 20 years ago, that we started seeing some shifts in the models. Maybe even back as far as 30 years ago, where people were taking a home. And usually it started off where, somebody's got a house and they're going to bring in mom to take care of her. And then, they realize, hey, they can make a little money by taking care of a few others. And so they, start taking care of a few people. And that was how these small ones kind of started out. And then, as the boomers started to come around, then people are realizing that, hey, there's a big demographic need for this. So we saw a transition to, that residential style of assisted living, where people taking a nice big ranch house and kind of converting it and having, 10 to 16 residents in one of these. And that model works pretty good if you get, up to 16 people in these homes. And usually when you get to 16, it's going to be a special purpose, but it's built like a home. So you go in, there's a living room, there's a kitchen, there's a dining room, and then you've got all the rooms that shoot off from there. And then, there's the larger facilities as well. And it goes all the way up to the big ones, which are called CCRCs, and that's that continuous care retirement community. And they're the ones that have the independent living. It's the big, huge facilities, and they're almost like resorts. You start off there and you have independent living, and then you go into assisted living. And then, if you need memory care, you can get it there. And then, usually those don't go into nursing homes. That's kind of where you leave, is if you get out of assisted and memory care and actually need a nurse, then you're going to go to a nursing home. But those facilities are, they're big. They make pretty good money on them. It's big bucks. There's a facility here in Colorado that the entrance fee is up to $500,000 just to, they take that 500K and they set it aside, and then you're paying your monthly rent on top of that. And they go and put that money to work. And then if you run out of cash beside that, then they'll start drawing from that 500K until you reach end of life. And then after you pass, they give 90% of what's left back to your heirs. So they still keep a little bit of that. And that's their model, and they're charging top dollar, like, $10,000 a month. And, it's a big resort.
Well, I'm sure
So,
that 500 grand isn't just sitting there. They're
oh, no.
investing it in some way or earning interest on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going out building another one of these, repeating the process. So, that's the big boys. And then, of course, you've got the small facilities that are residential homes. And, we see a lot of the 8-bed style, which is left over from, the people that were doing this 10, 15 years ago. And, 8 beds were kind of okay, but these days with the way labor is, 8 beds just don't pay the bills. It's a really, really, really tough business at 8. But if you get up to 12 or 16, now the numbers start to make sense. And then you do multiples of those, and you can have a really nice business that's throwing off, $10K a house, or better. 16 beds I've seen do $20K a month of net profit. So
that's net. That's after you pay for the nurses and all the facilities and licensing, all the other expenses.
Yep, that's right.
That's pretty good.
A 16-bed model works really well. And, it especially, so then there's the memory care model too. And I know a guy that's got 5 of these 16-bed memory care, and you get another $1,000 a month out of memory care. So he's doing about 30 grand a month out of each of his facilities. He's got 5 of them. Mm-hmm. So, that's pretty good numbers there.
Oh yeah. So in the residential model, and you're talking about 16 beds, obviously the traditional house isn't set up for 16 different rooms. Are you talking about like multiple beds per room? Are you putting up walls? Like, what's the typical layout? And then how do you retrofit a normal house to fit that model?
Yeah, a 16 bed is usually going to be either a purpose built. So there's a guy down in Texas right now that's building what he calls mansions, 16 bed built like homes, but they are, 16 beds, and they're specifically built for this purpose. Aside from that, a nice ranch house that you can get here in the Denver metro area, if you can find a good sized ranch, and maybe you convert the garage and maybe you do an addition, then that's probably going to be a 12 bed. And that's, a little bit harder model, but you can make that work. We did a house a few years ago though, where it was already an 8-bed facility. So they had 7 bedrooms is how they set it up. And one of the bedrooms was shared. But it was on a double lot. So they came to us with this idea, hey, we want to, add another 8 bedrooms on. We've got the room to do it. And one of the guys was a construction guy. So his cost to build was a little bit cheaper than what, others would be, because they could do it themselves. So we ended up doing that deal, and we bought the existing business and facility for a little bit more than $1 million, and then put another 700,000 into the expansion of that. And so they're all in about 1.7, somewhere around there, and had 16 beds with 15 bedrooms. And that was a really nice model. It was doing really well. And we actually helped them just sell that for 2.2 million just recently, about a month ago. So they were in at 1.7, sold out at 2.2. The appraisal came in on that thing at about 2.4. So
wow,
it really was a sweet little setup that they did.
Oh yeah. How much time did it take from when they finished it to when it got like kind of normalized, and then they could sell it again? Because there's some time there to like get it up and going and get all the systems and processes normalized. How long did that take?
Well, they pretty much finished it right in the middle of COVID. So that delayed everything.
For sure.
Normally it would take probably 8 months, maybe 6 to 8 months to fill 8 beds. Now, if you're starting from scratch, it's a little harder, because getting that first few people in there is tough, but they already had something going. So, and they had a reputation, the place had been around for 20 years. So, good reputation, already had people in there. Filling up the other 8 beds was not too difficult. So, aside from COVID, that probably could have been done in 4 or 5 months. But with COVID, I think it delayed everything. It probably took them a year, maybe a year to 15 months to get it full. Then they operated for another 2 or 3 years like that, and then went and put it up for sale.
Interesting. So they did pretty well, just on
Yeah.
the high end margin from what they've 1.7 to 2.3.
Yep.
That's
2.2 is what it sold for.
2.2. That's
Yeah,
pretty.
but
That's pretty
it
good.
appraised a little higher, which we always want to see the appraisals come in higher because it makes the bank a little happier.
So the appraisal then wouldn't just be like, okay, here's the comps of sales. It's a blended appraisal, right? Looking at both the
Right.
real estate and then the business profit and loss statement and all that sort of thing, right?
Yep. So it gets pretty complex trying to figure out what that should be.
Yeah, and so there's probably a professional company that comes in and knows how to appraise an assisted living facility. Do they need comps like you typically would? Like, are you looking at like comparable sales of other assisted living businesses?
Yeah, they do that. Sometimes they got to go out of state, if there's not much around. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's been enough activity here in Colorado that they were able to pull comps from here. And, these guys, it cost an appraisal like that's about $4,000 on average.
Wow.
So it's not your typical appraisal that you go and, spend $700 on.
Right. So one of the biggest elements of this, I think maybe a lot of people who are thinking about this don't think about enough is compliance. Like, what does it take to get one of these assisted living facilities to be compliant with ADA and all the other regulations that are out there?
Well, the main things are you want to eliminate any tripping hazards in the house. So a big ranch without a sunken living room or something like that, that works pretty well. The bathrooms, usually you got to have hand guards, handrails, that type of thing and your hallways. You want to have handrails in the hallways. So those are a couple of items that are pretty important. The fire suppression is really your biggest ticket item because you pretty much have to have fire suppression throughout the entire house. And even these days, now you need fire suppression in closets. You need them outdoors on the patios. So they're getting kind of strict with the fire suppression. So that's going to run, $30,000 probably for your fire suppression system. And then if you're doing Medicaid, you got to put in a fire alarm system as well. And that's another $20,000. So on average, it's like $50,000 for your fire suppression. A garage build out, you could put $150,000 in that. Maybe you want to do a ramp and get rid of your stairs. So you're going to have some money in that. In Colorado, we now have to follow what's called the FGI guidelines. And that's the Federal Guidelines Institute, which is basically the building code for assisted living. So the things that we've seen bite us on that is the height for the window has to be 36 inches or lower. And a lot of these windows in, some of these houses were built at like 42 inches. So, we've seen houses got to go in and lower that window by 6 inches. That's a big ticket item. That can be $40,000-$50,000 depending on how many windows you have like that.
What's the mentality behind that? Is it so that someone can climb out of it?
No, I think it's actually so that if they're sitting in a wheelchair, they can look out the window.
Oh.
I think that's the intent behind it.
Mm.
So, even if we're on the second level, but it doesn't make any sense to be able to climb out, but still have to have it. So I'd read somewhere that it had something to do with, if they're in a wheelchair, they want to look out the window, they can do it.
Yeah, it's a quality of life thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, exactly.
still, I mean, to legislate that doesn't seem rational in my mind, but I'm a business guy.
I mean,
you could build a ramp by all the
there's
windows.
so many things in FGI that are there, and it's actually written for the big facilities. And if you're doing a residential home, there's just a few of these items that you have to follow. So, it's not like every item in there you've got to do. They've got certain sections that you have to follow, and that's one of the ones that kind of bites you. Another thing they ask for is a swirly sink in the laundry room. And a swirly sink is basically a sink like a toilet that flushes. So I guess if you got to clean some laundry that, might be messy in that way, you have that in the laundry room. So one of our clients, had to tear out a whole wall and reconfigure a laundry room. And it was about $10,000 put one of those sinks in, something we weren't expecting because this was an already existing facility. With the new regulations, that was now required. So she had to, make those changes.
Interesting. So this made me think about, how there's like the small facilities, which kind of lowers the barrier to entry for an investor who's got a little bit of cash that wants to get into the business. And, there's a whole different way of marketing these things and getting clients. And I'm thinking about like short-term and midterm rentals and the challenges that those people had when they were battling for like hotel space, right? And then the hotels there's this whole like legislative and lobbying effort by hotels to push these smaller facilities out because they're taking business away from them. Do you see any parallels of that situation happening in assisted living where these large facilities are saying, no, like leave it to the big boys. Like we got this handled. We don't need these small little establishments coming in and taking our business. It's dangerous, right? They're putting people's lives in danger. Do you see that at all?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's not direct, they're not saying we're doing this, but their actions kind of say that's what they're doing.
Mm.
And we've seen that for years. And, think about it, in Colorado, there's about 650 assisted livings, and about 450 of those are small, like under 16 beds. So, it's not a big part of the market, but it's a chunk. It's maybe about a third of the market there. So anything that they can, legislate to make it harder on the small guys, they're all in favor of it, seems like. And, like any bureaucratic state like Colorado, we see a lot of that stuff. And, the state's not very friendly to the smaller ones either. They're kind of overtaxed because they don't have enough people. And, I've seen them take attitudes that, they don't care about that you're small and you're trying to help people. Hey, if you can't do this, and fine, we'll close you down. And, it seems like it should be a little bit different because in the end, what we're really trying to do is help these people with their activities of daily living, trying to help, they're disabled in essence. So, we're trying to help disabled people, and to meet resistance from the state is kind of silly and doesn't make sense.
If it doesn't make sense, then what is the motive, do you think, from the bureaucrats?
It's too much work for them. That's more, we got to go out and inspect, and we don't have enough people, and that's more paperwork for it. Just BS like that. They don't care about what they're really there for. What they care about, again, I hate to say it this way, but they're bureaucrats, and what they care about is what they're doing on a daily basis and how hard their job is.
Right. It's self-preservation.
Yeah.
Right. They want to make sure that they're doing enough just to get elected the next time around. Right.
These aren't even elected officials. These are, that's why I say they're bureaucrats. So
that's true.
It just,
right.
So yeah, it's kind of tough. And, there's another association here in Colorado called the Colorado Assisted Living Association, and they do a lot of legislative actions, and they're pretty involved in that. And we support them as much as we can because they've been able to get some things done. And the whole group of assisted living operators, we've gotten together when things start looking squirrely and gone to the state and kind of argued about some of this stuff. And we've been fortunate to have some attorneys that know how to fight the state as well, that are part of the group. So that would be Brian and Michelle Pinkowski at Pinkowski Law. So if anybody needs an attorney in this space, they're great for that. And we've had some successes, and people are still, opening these up, and, but, some of them are still closing, but usually it's the smaller ones that are suffering and not doing, very well, because, labor's gone up probably 25 to 40% since COVID. And we haven't seen the rates for the housing go up that much for the residents. So it's put a real strain on the industry. And, until those numbers go up a little bit, it's going to be a little tough, but they're starting to climb. And I'm seeing, the average rate used to be like 3,500, and now we're seeing 45 and 5,000 as averages. And
what can you break the money you're talking about right now? Is that the amount per bed per month of revenue?
Exactly right.
Okay.
So, you run the numbers on something like this, and if you got a 12 bed and you're getting $5 or $6 grand a month, you can do pretty good. The average cost to run an 8 to 12 bed is probably going to be 22 to 24,000 a month, plus your debt service. And if you are, and that's what basically one full time during the day and one at night. And then as you start adding people, if you're over 12 and they need more help, then you're going to be probably more in the range of 28,000 to 32,000 a month for your debt service. So,
the debt service has to do with the mortgage, right? On the real estate side,
lease or mortgage, or however you're paying for that real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those are ballpark numbers, but that's about what you'd expect in a residential style.
So we talk about the increased costs. We're talking about the healthcare costs, right? So what it costs to have somebody there, a nurse or some sort of a nurse practitioner. Are those costs, do you think maybe went up as much because there's less of them after COVID, and how so many of those people were pushed out of the industry?
Yeah. So first, to clarify, nurses are not required in assisted living. You have caregivers, and the most that they do in that nursing phase is basically hand out pills. So they have to be qualified qualified medical administration personnel. So, they track, okay, Susie needs her drugs at 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So they write all this down and give Susie her drugs at that time, and keep track of it. So that's the highest skill that they really need. Aside from that, they're just helping these people, cooking and cleaning, and maybe helping them with toileting or showers, that type of thing. So that's really just caregivers, and caregivers are not necessarily high paid individuals. They're probably right now is averaging 19, $20 an hour. So, some can go to McDonald's and make that kind of money.
Right.
And, with COVID and all that, a lot of people got paid to sit at home. They found they made more money if they didn't go to work. I had an assistant that worked for me, and that's what she ended up doing. It's like, oh, I can make more money not going to work. It's like, well, okay, that's what happened.
Right.
So, that put a strain on that segment of workers for everybody, because, everybody needs that kind of level of help. And, that's just been hard. And, that level of employee is a little bit harder anyway, too, because they're usually not highly educated and highly motivated. So, they miss shifts, miss work, have a hard time, always have some drama. There's just a lot of things going on with that level of employee. So it's a challenge. That's the biggest challenge I would say that operators face, no matter what size they are, from the small operators to the big operators. That labor thing is the biggest challenge, and it's the number one expense. Labor is typically about 50% of your costs on average. So, that's a pretty big nut, and you got to be able to figure that one out to keep your costs in order.
Oh yeah. And that's why the complexity of a deal like this is so much more challenging than just doing a wholesale deal where maybe you're the only labor that's involved and it's a commission-based business. but someone's like, oh yeah, I like the numbers. Somebody at the Rio was talking about assisted living, so I'm going to get into it. And then they try and they're like, oh my God, I got to manage people. I have to be able to run, expense reports, and I have to be able to do accounting and all of the things that go with a business, and they just don't know. So
Yeah.
is this one of the reasons why you started your association, is to really like educate the people who are interested in this space about like all the moving parts and how to connect it all together?
Yes, exactly. We're just there to try to contribute and help people understand what they're getting into, because a lot of the people that come to my meetings, have no idea about what the space is anyway. So, we just try to give them as much information as possible. We always have speakers that come on that have good content, and you know, um, whatever we can do to teach people and help them succeed is really our goal. So, because the more people that are successful in this business, the better off everybody is. And, the end result is that more people have got a quality place to live. So,
Mhm.
there's some warm fuzzy feeling in what we're doing here. We're helping part of the world.
Oh yeah. That's so cool about this versus other angles, is that it's built right into it. Like a lot of people will do, they'll donate, they'll do charity work outside of their business, but the caregiving aspect of assisted living is baked right into the business model.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. But it could go the other way too. Like I've heard horror stories of things happening in assisted living facilities where the caregiver just isn't up to snuff. Like they're not skilled enough, or they just don't give a crap. They're just trying to get through the shift. I actually,
That can happen.
yeah.
And like any business, you're always going to have some employees that, maybe aren't that good. And so really, it's a lot of vetting your employees, and, background checks and all that stuff is required. And I think mostly though, it's culture. If you're an operator, you want to have a good culture. And I've always believed, from my years of doing business, that there's a circle of business, and it really starts with your employees. So, as a business owner, you got to take care of your employees. That's number one. And then your employees take care of your customers. A happy employee is always going to take good care of their customers, and your customers take care of you. So it just comes right back. So
Mm.
you take care of those employees, customers are happy, and then you're taken care of. So, not many people think of it that way, but it really is, I think, part of the keys of success is to be able to, understand that your employees are really where it all starts. They're the face of your business.
Yeah.
So I think the operators that do a good job with their employees are more successful.
Through your association or through some of your other offerings, have you taken some efforts to try to like standardize what like a perfect facility looks like, and then creating some sort of like standard operating procedures and processes for like how to start a facility, to run it, to even exit and sell it?
Yeah, I've looked at a lot of those models. The challenge that we have right now is the build costs are so high. It's really it's a tough thing to pencil. So, our strategy has been to find the ones that are out there already and operating, and maybe need some operational help to get them back on track. That's kind of been what we've been doing. But like I mentioned, the guy down in Texas that's building from scratch, their build costs are a little cheaper down there. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And if you got the wherewithal to get through that startup, because that whole process from starting, hey, I'm going to do this, to okay, we're stabilized, it's about a 3-year window. So, you're going to go through all the plans and all the build and all that stuff, and the licenses. And by the time you're said and done with everything there, you're going to be 18 months to 2 years in it, and then another year to get stabilized. So it takes some cash to do something like that, pretty deep pockets. But when you do have something like that, okay, let's look 5 years down the road. Now you get something that's throwing off 20 grand a month for that product. And that's a pretty good thing. And, you're helping a lot of people, and you've got a pretty strong business, and that business is probably going to be worth 2.5, $3 million, depending on how you scale it. But that's just for one of those, it's probably going to be somewhere in that range. So, we like that. But, here's an interesting deal that we just did that it kind of blew me away when I got the appraisal back. We just bought a facility down in Phoenix, Scottsdale, actually, for $6 million. And we're going to put $1.5 million into it. So we'll be in the whole thing for 7.5. And we're actually leasing this out to an operator and giving him an option to buy it from us. So he'll buy it from us in 3 to 4 years for about 8.5. So we'll make $1 million in that whole process there. But the appraisal came back as stabilized at $14 million. We're going, dang, look at that. So now we're looking at that, and so here's kind of my analogy when I look at that, and what I've been telling my partners is, when I started wholesaling way back in the day, and I did pretty good. I had a pretty good year my first year out there, and did about 22 deals, and made $100,000. I was feeling pretty good about myself. Great, cool, man. I made $100,000. My realtor that I've been working with made $200,000.
Right.
I was like, well, that's cool. I think I'm sitting in the wrong seat. I need to be in that seat there. So that was what was the impetus for me to go out and get my license, right? Well, now I'm looking at the same situation going, dang, we just put out $7.5 million, and we'll make $1 million, but our operator's going to end up making like $6 million when he's sitting done. So we're sitting in the wrong seat again.
So what do you do to get in the other seat? Do you just
Right.
become the operator?
Right. So what we're looking at is, okay, well, let's look at some of these big projects, and we'll become the operators and use a professional management company to handle all the operations. So we pay them to do what our operator on the other one's doing. They're doing it for themselves. That's great. But we don't want to be in operations. We want the investment side of that, but we don't want to, have to deal with all the employees. So we'll pay a professional management company to do that. And there's plenty of them out there for that size of a business.
Sure.
This is a model that's proven and tested with many investors across the nation. We've only been doing the lease option side, the real estate side, playing landlord. And in the next year or so, we're going to be looking at, okay, we'll go out and buy one of these facilities and, play the operation side and use a pro management company. And we'll basically, increase our income. The numbers are pretty staggering when we look at just the cash flow involved, and then we look at the IRRs, and they're pretty impressive too. So that's next part of our growth path for what we've been doing. And after we've done this a few times, and we'll figure out what next.
Yeah, you just figure out the new angle.
Yeah.
Did you think about, because there's the whole angle of going and getting the professional management company, but could you accomplish the same thing by just adding layers of leadership below you?
Yeah,
right? Just within the same company, but not outsourcing it.
Yeah, we could, but that's a pain to do. I'd rather pay somebody else to do it. It takes a lot of bandwidth. And me, I like putting deals together and finding opportunities, and crafting deals, and getting them done and go on to the next deal. Yeah, could we put together a whole operations management company? We could, but there's people already doing it, and for what they charge, it just makes sense to pay them to do it.
Yeah.
We're
just with slightly smaller margins, because they get their cut, right? But that's okay. It's okay. Highest and best use again, right? Like, what's your highest and best use? It's not managing a bunch of VPs below you, and then directors, and then mid-level management to go and manage these things.
Yep. Perfect way to put it.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned a gentleman by the name of Gene Garino, which was one of the grandfathers of this industry. tell me a little bit about your relationship with him and how first you started out in just his coaching program, but a relationship came from that.
It did, yeah. Gene was a great guy. Um, I got to know him pretty well because of, when I started my association, um, he was like the guy we'd be sending people to. So, hey, you need more information. Here's the basics. You need more information, do that. And we had him come out and actually do a few presentations to our group as well. And then we'd go out to the RalNotCon, which is the National Association conference that was out in Phoenix. And we go there every year. And I've been going since that started, which was, I think, back in 17. And that was, Gene's brainchild. So I got to know him pretty good there. Got to know his family fairly well. And unfortunately, we lost him to COVID back in 2020. But his daughter took over and she's doing a great job. And, it's a nice family run business and they're great people. And I always direct people over to them when they want to learn about it and, learn about the business basics. And you got to know, if you're going to do this, at least in the operations, you have to know something about business. And that's usually my two qualifying questions. Have you ever owned a business before or had some kind of a, business type of a background, upper management in a company or something along those lines? And number two, do you know anything about caregiving? Or, a lot of people, the one partner is a business person and the other partner is a caregiver, husband-wife team, something like that. So that usually works pretty well. And when we think about doing our lease options, those are some qualifying things that we're looking at to see if, they're going to qualify for our program.
Yeah. I got a good story for you. So I don't remember how long ago it was, but do you know Tim Mai?
No, I don't think
Yeah, he ran this organization called the Heroes. It was the Heroes Coaches Summit. And we did an event out at Amelia Island in Florida a few years back. And Isabella was one of the speakers. And Mona was there too. And
Cool.
after the event ended, I don't remember what happened, but like I was trying to get to the airport and like I just couldn't get a car. And so, somehow word spread and Mona came up to me and she's like, "Hey, do you want to ride with me? I'm going to the airport right now. You can come with us." I was like, "Heck yeah." And so I just jumped in the car with this random person I had never met before. And we just had like the best conversation along the way, just from the hotel to the airport. And it was just totally random. But you talked about their family and it was just a great family to meet. And I know they do business the right way. I've had a chance to talk with Isabella a couple times, but they're really doing right by Gene.
Yeah, they are. They've certainly continued his legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for you? It sounds like this new layer of the professional management company coming in and, kind of leaning into the operation side of the business to increase your ROI. Is that kind of what you see in the future, or are you going to have any other buckets you're going to be working on?
Well, we'll still do the lease options. We've got lots of operators that are wanting to expand their business, and that's a pretty solid business model that we're doing. It's worked well for years, and we'll continue to do that. But yeah, to take that next step and get more return for our investors, then the operations is where we need to go. We saw our margins get cut down a bit when the rates went up. We used to be able to buy these things at 4%, and now we're hitting 7.5%. So margins got trimmed a little bit, even though we had to raise our rates a little bit to the operators. We couldn't do it a full 3 or 4 points because there's no way they could operate with that much. So we had to take a haircut on the returns, but they're still good returns. It's just not as good as it used to be. So now we're looking, well, how do we get the returns back to where they were? And actually, this is even better. So it's the next step. I think it's a little bigger step, and we're doing bigger deals now. We used to do a lot of $1 million deals, and now we're doing $3, $4, $5, $6 million deals. We did one a couple of years ago. It was $15 million. So, you know, they're bigger deals, and you know what? They're just as hard as the small deals. It's just one more zero. So
Right.
why not?
Oh yeah. It's just leverage, right? You just
Yeah.
leverage your time to do bigger deals. I'm doing the same thing now. Like I'm moving into the multifamily space and, raising money for syndications and looking at just bigger deals because, we've been around for a while now. Right. And so we know that there's a way of scaling up our businesses, um, to get better ROI and see those extra zeros, which I think is, a lot more exciting. Um, so for anybody who's thinking about this space and working with you, like how can they connect with you? What would you suggest for somebody who's thinking about it, and how can they get started?
Well, you know, you can either call me or email me. Either way, our website's a good place just to kind of get your feet wet. That's the DAALR.com, dollar.com.
Okay.
Love the way that acronym turned out. Um,
That wasn't dollar wasn't taken.
no, and you know that it's funny just how it sounds when we talk about it. Sometimes, you know, initially it felt like, well, you know, here we are calling it dollar because, you know, it's like money, but it is what it is, you know, DAALR.com, which stands for Denver Association of Assisted Living Residences. And so on that site is a lot of information just to get people started. And there's connections there to our Facebook page and our meetup page. We have our meeting once a month. We actually have one coming up in 2 days. And this one's going to be interesting because we've got Mitch and Jen on talking about their success story. And, you know, that's a pretty cool story. And we've been a big part, I think, of helping them get to the level that they are. So, and we had Isabel actually last month talking about, you know, the things that they're doing out there. So I thought this was a good way to wrap up the year with, you know, here's what some people have really succeeded with. So, and my phone number, 303-888-0078. You know, anybody can call me up. If I don't answer, just leave a message. And I've got an iPhone, so sometimes I don't get my message for a day. So don't think I'm ignoring you, but for some reason iPhones are doing that. But you know, I'm always happy to talk with people and try to guide them to what this business is and help them out. You know, I'm an open book when it comes to that. And you know, if people want to invest with us, and we can have that conversation too. But if they're just trying to get started, again, anything we can do to help them, we want to do that.
So just make that a little bit more clear so people can invest with you, right? They don't have to go and do this all on their own. They can be like a passive investor in these deals that you're finding because you need capital.
Yep, that's right. We've got about 250 investors or so in our, oh gosh, I think we have 11 funds right now. And so depending on, you know, the deals that we're doing, you know, we don't take anybody's money until we have something lined up, but we always want people to, you know, get lined up so that we can continue to do deals. And, you know, we're taking on new money and of course, repeat money from our investors that have had success. And that's how we continue to do what we do.
Amazing. Well, Vern, thanks so much for taking the time and sharing your experience. And I think we, gave people just enough information to pique their interest about this really unique niche in the space. And I think it's very timely too, because you talked about the boomers, right? And so there's a big opportunity right now for a real estate investor who's looking to do something that has more of a business twist to it. And like you mentioned earlier too, this isn't for anybody. Like you really should, if you're going to succeed in this business, have a place in your heart for helping people. Right. And I think this is a good place for it. And so you guys, if you are interested in assisted living, reach out to Vern. He's one of the best in the business. You don't have to be in Colorado. You can be anywhere, and Vern will be able to help you out. There's a really good website. He said, go check out. You can learn more about the space. But Vern, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Benson. Good to see you.
You too. And everybody, thanks for listening to this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Please keep an eye out for more amazing guests, just like Vern Harris, on future episodes where we talk about business, real estate investing, entrepreneurship, and just figuring out different ways of making money. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.